talking about different objections that are raised against cosmological arguments for the existence of God. Now, for the next 5 weeks, I want to dive into a common response that's lodged against the Kalam argument, specifically the claim that it relies upon an incorrect view of time. Now, by way of reminder, the Kalam argument says whatever begins to exist has a cause, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. While the origins of the argument can be traced back to a medieval Arabic tradition, philosopher William Lane Craig is easily its most famous defender today. Now, Craig claims that this argument is entirely dependent on what is called the A theory of time. Now, the problem with this is that many, if not most, modern philosophers and cosmologists don't actually agree with the A theory of time. They hold to what's called the B theory. Now, even if this is true, that in and of itself does not mean that Craig is wrong. We don't determine truth by counting the number of scholarly heads. If history has taught us anything, it's that scholarly consensus can and often has been wrong. But it does raise an interesting question. If B theory is true, does the Kalam argument fall apart? Now, over the next 5 episodes, I'm going to argue that the answer to that question is no. I think the Kalam argument is still sound, even on a B theory of time. But before we dive too deeply into that, let me explain to you what A theory and B theory mean. The A theory of time essentially says that time exists exactly as we experience it. As time rolls on, events come into being, occur, and then fade away. The only moment that actually exists is the present. The past doesn't exist anymore, and the future doesn't exist yet. Now, that seems to be how time exists as we currently experience it in our everyday lives, but it's got some competition. B theory of time is a bit more complicated. It argues that all moments in the past, present, and future exist equally and tenselessly. Now, that term, tenselessly, may be a bit confusing. You see, on A theory, we would say that something did exist in the past tense, does exist in the present tense, or will exist in the future tense. Now, B theory, though, claims we shouldn't really think of time in these kinds of terms. Now, true, the limits of our language may make us all fall prey to using tense terms inadvertently or even out of necessity. But ultimately, all moments exist equally, without some having faded from existence or some still yet to come. Now, even though time is tenseless, it is still indexed. In other words, even though all moments are equally existent, they are still designated in some way as being prior to some moments or later than others. Think of time like a ruler. If you were to look down at a ruler, you would see a marking at every inch, right? Each inch would be marked with a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Now, ultimately, each inch is just like any other one. They're all the same length. Ultimately, there's really nothing to distinguish them except the order we have put them into. The first inch is labeled as inch number 1, and it is viewed as coming prior to inch number 2. While inch number 2 is viewed as coming after inch number 1, but prior to inch number 3. See, each inch is equally present on that ruler. If you were to look down on a 1-foot ruler, you could see all 12 inches simultaneously. But they've all been indexed in such a way that we perceive an order to them. That's what B theory says time is like. Each moment in time is indexed as occurring prior to or later than other moments, but all moments are equally existent. Now, next week we're going to explain why this is thought to be a problem for the Kalam argument. See you then. God bless.